What happens when a pro football player trades the gridiron for wealth management? Former NFLer Cory Procter reveals how the discipline, pressure, and teamwork of football shaped his leadership style, and how self awareness and crystal clear processes helped him reinvent his purpose. Plus, get insider tips on building a winning team and why having a trust is essential to protect your wealth. Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Are you ready to create real change in your leadership, your career, your life? Join me for a complimentary Lead and Thrive session, a 60-minute one-on-one strategy session where we will discuss your specific needs and map out the next steps to lead yourself and others powerfully. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Visit transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to book your Lead and Thrive session today. Let's work together to make it happen. Welcome to Rise to Lead. With me today is Cory Procter from Texas, originally from Washington State. Welcome, Cory.
Hey, welcome. Thank you. I appreciate for having me on, Regina.
It's really awesome to have you on with us. Thank you so much for joining us and for co-inspiring with me today. And today we have chosen a topic which is financial wealth, and especially for entrepreneurial leaders. And I haven't talked about this a lot on my podcast, so this is a first. And I'm excited about that. Very important topic, of course.
Heck yeah. No, I'm happy to be. I'll be the one that jumps into any sort of depth, I guess, for you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so in the past, Cory was with the NFL, where he played 6 years with the Detroit Lions, Dallas Cowboys, and Miami Dolphins. I'm not the expert in this, Cory, okay? I have to admit, but a lot of our listeners probably are. So after his career in the NFL, he launched Pro Capital Wealth Management in Southlake, Texas, where his firm provides comprehensive financial planning with a focus in asset protection based on his own story of lawsuit and loss. He speaks regularly to companies at conferences and other events on various financial topics. Cory also serves as a board member for Majesty Outdoors, which supports fatherless children and single mothers in need. Cory, let's focus on financial planning and asset protection for today's conversation, which is something, as I said before, I haven't really covered on Rise to Lead yet, also because there are, of course, split opinions about this topic, right? Especially in current times.
All over the map, that's for sure.
Right. And it's really important to bring this up in these times, although yes, there are a lot of different opinions, as I said, because we really have no idea what's going to happen next. There's so many events, like one after the other. We are in information overload world. And we're getting a lot of cues about what might happen, about, for example, digitalization of currencies and all these things, right? And a lot of people want to protect themselves from the control that's possible through digital currencies. And specifically also related to freedom of speech, for example, and whatnot. So we're not going to go into this topic specifically today, but yes, I wanted to mention it because there's huge uncertainty about wealth protection and wealth planning at this time, right? So let's focus on giving our listeners some options and why they need to potentially not just diversify their investments, but also protect their assets even more than ever before. So, shall we dive in?
Yeah, no problem. I guess, broadly starting, I mean, you're right. There's, we're at new age with digital currency, and there's a lot of excitement around it. There's a lot of hesitancy around it because it's brand new. I mean, it's been here a little bit. I tell people this is here to stay. I'm not against it. I'm not necessarily for it, because of exactly what you're talking about. I don't necessarily want everything. I don't believe cash is king. Cash flow is king
Mhm.
in my life. But I don't
Yep.
really want a digital record of everything. If I have the ability to go grab 100 grand in cash and go jump up to the ranch and get off the grid, I want that possibility. So
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree
just
with you.
so, I'm still very much in Texas. A lot of us in Texas feel that way.
Mhm.
And so but there are some cool things jumping around that. There's actually some good friends of mine are have made some headway in bringing back gold and silver as a currency option, and so where a lot of people jump into some items like any sort of crypto or Bitcoin digital, or might think that like gold is a good investment. While it has gold has technically held its value versus a $20 bill 200 years ago or 100
Mhm.
years ago. Um, it's not necessarily a great utility because we can't go. I might be able to go buy gold, but I can't go use it at Costco for my groceries. And
Mhm.
so, the utility of it is not that great. But we are having some states that are backing up its use and trying to bring it back as an actual currency option. So that's really, really cool. I love seeing that stuff. As it opposed to coming to protecting our assets, we delve a lot into really three different categories or three layers of protection to people's assets, and that's traditional insurance, that's entities, and that's trust planning. And so when we come into it, we really, somebody comes into our office, we really start looking at things that are titled in their lives. And we might have somebody that comes in and they could range from 5 million to 500 million. And typically, like the larger the client, the more complex, or the more assets there are to lose. And so a lot of times we'll come in as, home is in their personal name, or rental property is in their personal name, or just accounts that are in their personal name. Or we get a lot of yours, mine, and our situation where people are on their second or third marriage and have children from previous marriages that have commingled a ton of assets or have a bunch of joint assets that are a lot of potential disinheritance. So we run into a ton of estate planning issues. And when it comes into that, not we kind of have a suite of tools that the IRS likes to give us, right? But it's not necessarily a one size fits all for everybody. And we got to come in, and the biggest things that we look at is like, okay, could I get sued and lose everything? Or is there another train wreck scenario where somebody could potentially get at these assets that were not intended to get them? And that's some of the biggest thing outside of market risk. Or we know that inherently that like there is market risk. I know if I go invest that potential for loss of capital, or if I go invest in this company, it might go away altogether. But a lot of the times we just don't, we have this back of our mind fear that it's going to go away. And so we use all of our suite of tools that we can to do all of our due diligence and making sure that we've protected our money and walk to make sure it's going to the people we want, right? And then on top of it, we do the same thing in the market. And so there's a lot of layers to that, but essentially we want to try to check every box that we possibly can to make sure that the work that we've put into our life, which is what money is just a representation of your life's work, that it's not thrown away and all for naught. So that's our goal, is to be the gatekeepers of that and make sure it can't get stolen.
Okay, great. And I want to go into the trust topic a little bit more in just a bit, because I think it's a very important topic. But first, I'm also curious, tell us why you decided to even walk on this path. You used to be a professional athlete, right? And now you're into wealth management and you own a financial firm. So share with us what moved you to do this.
Well, I appreciate how you put it. I had somebody, you're so nice about it. Somebody else the other day they're like, why would we take advice from you? NFL players have a horrible record with money. And so I cracked up. But no, I guess I was not the norm. And so what I mean by that is I kind of had an early life experience that I think set a little bit of a foundational, um, I'll call it a healthy fear with money. And so what happened was in high school, my junior year, I rear-ended a lady. I got into a car accident, and largely everybody seemed fine. It was just basically a fender bender. And but a year later, we get a letter in the mail. She filed lawsuit against my family and my mom and my stepdad, and it ended up not being a good deal. I couldn't tell you every single detail, but you know, it basically came home my freshman year of college to them living in the apartment. And, my brother told me how the truck or the Suburban got repoed while he was at his buddy's house. And so it affected them financially quite a bit, right? And so I carried that into college, into playing in the NFL for 6 years, and I got to see other guys how they treat their money. And one of my buddies lost 12 million in one investment, and I'm
Wow.
sitting here and I'm just observing this thing. I made minimum 5 out of my 6 years playing ball, and which is not like small money, right? It wasn't a lot for in the NFL for all the big picture, for all the big contracts that we see. But I basically was like short arms, deep pockets, and I didn't want to touch anything. I was super frugal in my spending, and I just got to see all these examples of how they could torpedo their own life with their money, or they could have these outliers that come in and really come and take advantage of them. And so, seeing those things, all of it left these imprints were like, man, I was so worried about screwing it up myself. And so I ended up getting hooked up with a financial advisor out of Wisconsin, conflict of interest. I married her daughter. And so she did really good things for me and helped me grow my money and most of it was traditional stock market. And so but as we grew, I asked more and more questions, and they started off really dumb at first, right? I mean, like any kid, why? What's a bond? What's a stock? I have no idea what these things are. Well,
Mhm.
I was just kind of the big dumb jock who didn't care about asking dumb questions. And so eventually those questions became really smart. And the good thing about her is she was just patient with me, and she was fast and get back to me. And as those questions got a lot smarter, I started understanding what I was involved in and a lot more. And so I wanted to start adding elements to my life after I learned about my investments and what my money was in. I started wanting developing essentially a vault around my life to make sure it couldn't get stolen. Like that event couldn't repeat itself. Well, my last year in the NFL was 2010. So we're 15 years anniversary will be November of my knee injury in Miami. And my wife and I today are way more healthy financially than we ever were playing football. And that's really what I want to share with people is like, man, get involved in your own stuff. And you don't have to know every nuance. Like some people want to just hire somebody out to do it. And that's really what our firm does. But that became the calling was go repeat what you did in your life for other people. And so that's what it was. It's like, you have done incredible things, and we have so much wealth and so much prosperity in our country that it's created so much good but so much bad at the same time. And unfortunately, when you have built yourself up and done phenomenal, you and your family, you've become more of a target. And so you become, the tower in the air that everybody wants to come attack. And so if we can protect you and make sure that that's protected for you, for your family, for your wealth into the next 2 generations, that's our goal. Is we want to make sure that's taken care of, and you're not getting cut down, and your family has earned this everything and keeps everything.
Right, and it can really hit anybody. I mean, I also have my fraud and loss and corruption stories, and some of them are in my book, Living My Freaking Amazing Life, which wasn't always so freaking amazing in that sense, right? Because it's been ups and downs, but it's still my unique life. And we all, of course, learn our lessons. We evolve over time and whatnot. But again, not so long ago, I was involved in a case where it was blatant corruption. I had bought an apartment, and there was big loss involved because I would have actually expected a 30% market increase in a year. So it was not a bad investment logically, but then we sometimes don't know what's going to happen. So I that's the reason why I'm bringing this up is because life sometimes brings surprises. I'm of the opinion that we create everything, but we of course don't create everything intentionally or consciously. A lot of what we create is created subconsciously and is some reflection of something that's going on inside of us, right?
Mm.
But doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with whatever we create. And so it can really happen for anybody, whether you have a lot of money or not so much money. So it's really, really important to know what your options are. And that's why I invited you, Cory, here today. Now, let's talk maybe a little bit more about the trust, because not everybody is familiar with how it actually works and why it's important.
Sure. No, this is a huge option. There's a ton of great information out there that you can go digest and go to YouTube or go a lot of people's channels. And there's a lot of bad information out there too. And so, when it comes to trust planning, or estate planning or asset protection planning, it's they're separate, but they're woven together. They like touch each other's edges so much. Um, and the tough thing about it is you can't reach like one know-it-all or universal answer, just because every state is different. And you have some states that are similar, like Texas and Florida are similar, but in community property. But you just have nuances on what they protect or what kind of protections they have. And an example is here in Texas, we have an unlimited creditor exemption limit on our homes, on our equity in our homes. And what that means is if I get into a car accident and somebody wants to sue me, they couldn't get the equity that I have in my home up to 30 grand in the bank in one vehicle. And so that means everything else is potentially on the line. And so you get some federal protection, and then there's some state protection. The state of California, anything goes. Everything's up for grabs. And so, and as a comparison, Washington, versus here in Texas, we have an unlimited creditor exemption. In Washington, it's the creditor exemption is the average or the mean of the home value of the county that you live in. And so we had a client up there that had a $4 million home, and the average in their county was just over 700,000. Well, that meant up to 3+ million of equity is potentially exposed to lawsuit issues if they ran into that. And so we had to take care of that. And so when it comes to trust planning, there's, I'll say kind of broadly, 2 different categories: revocable and irrevocable trusts. Revocable trust, is that's exactly what it sounds about. Or you might say revocable, where I can revoke provisions or the plan that I initially put in, and I can go change them up. And that may be like, maybe I'm ticked off at my kid. I want to disinherit my kid. And it depends in the process. But you're laying out a plan to set in motion what I want to happen when I die. It doesn't give me asset protection in my current life, a revocable living trust. But you can set in motion for it to have it for your children and for your grandchildren. And so there's other options while we're currently living. Typically, like if I run into a problem, it falls to insurance first. But let's be honest, insurance companies are there to profit too, and they don't want to pay out if they don't have to. Okay. So that's a whole separate conversation. Then it falls to entity and trust structure. And so this might be, LLCs or partnerships that we like a family limited partnership that you've heard of, that we could separate our assets from us while we maintain control, but it's not in our name. And then we get into even like reciprocal trusts for each other. That is another asset protection term in the irrevocable sense, but now we have some other maybe tax mitigation issues that we have to look at in there, because trust planning inherently, if you go look down on the breakdown sheet on tax planning, our income threshold that we can take on as far as taxes come is way low, meaning I think it was somewhere around 30 grand. If I make more than 30 grand out of my trust, I'm in the top tax bracket, 37%. So,
Yeah, and
there's
it
some.
varies according to country. We have people also listening from other countries, of course, right? But this is a great. We're talking more about the United States right now, of course, because that's what you're the expert in, and then you just got to look it up a little bit more in detail for your own country, of course.
Totally. And this is specific. So like you can talk to and now I don't have a law, I don't have a license to practice law, right? So I caveat all that. So talk to your attorney, but we've also read enough documents to make us dangerous. So
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of great documents. We've seen a lot of horrible ones. And essentially, we have a lot of horrible documents. Then you're just like, there's the whole world of problems that could open up to you. But it is state and country specific. So you want to get an attorney in the place that you live. And so, I like an example where like I've had a California attorney tell somebody who is living here in Texas that we can't title our home into our revocable living trust because it'll get rid of our SALT exemptions, state and local tax exemptions. And well, technically, yes, but we have to have provisions added into our trusts that are allowed to exempt us from that problem. And they couldn't understand it. They're like, they weren't sure why. Well, that's because you have a California attorney advising you in Texas. They're not familiar with Texas law. So make sure you're getting somebody local to you, specific in your neighborhood. I would tell you to not go cheap in these situations. I appreciate not wanting to go really high in price. Nobody necessarily wants to overpay for anything, but I'm not going to try to go to the cheapest plastic surgeon either if I'm trying to find a doctor who wants to take care of me, or if I have some work that I want to be done. Right. So
Get a new nose.
nobody but what's that?
Get a new nose.
Right. I'm
Or
going to get a
whatever.
new nose. I'm not going to Mexico. Okay.
Well, there are probably really good ones. We just don't know them, right? And yeah, and you want to be sure that you know who you're dealing with and what they know.
I'll tell you a ve- so my biggest mentor in this business is a lady here in Texas who's just absolutely killed it. Her name's Erin Botsford, and she sold her firm, I think it was 2017 or 2018. And when I got connected with her, this lady made me feel like I was 2 inches tall. Not on purpose because like she's a jerk or anything, but she's super direct. But it's because she was so put together, and she influenced my business so much. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest pieces was my processes. And because I had to, her processes were so laid out, so articulate, that her scripts in her head, every piece she could recite with great perfection. And so anytime she spoke to me, I felt completely inferior because of not just what she had done, but how she could communicate to me. And so And all it was because she was a lot further ahead in my business than in her business after she had exited and everything. She was way further ahead than me, right? Well, thank goodness she took me under her tutelage and I learned big time. But one thing a big piece was that those processes I implemented into my business. What it helped me do was make me way more articulate in my language and how I could explain exactly what we do and what it looks like for you to come on board as a client with us. Well, I started paying attention to every other business or service person after I learned that from her because and examples we've interviewed some doctors recently for a potential procedure that we're looking at. And I did this. I recently had a back procedure. I had a fusion on my L3 and L4 on my back, and I went to three different orthopedic doctors. And the first two that I went to, their staff, they're all nice people. Their staff was a complete mess. And no, nobody had any recollection of my history. Nobody could take accountability for booking and not booking these meetings. And their third party recommendations. I no joke. At three times I went into this office giving them grace, and they turned me away, told me that I had to go back to the original provider, and I had it up to here. Well, contrast with the actual doctor who did the surgery. I got his assistant. She was incredible. She was forward with communication, very clear in her steps and their process for executing the surgery and the follow up. And I'll tell you what, when I saw that, she could articulate on paper exactly where we were going. It looked just like us. And that gave me the most confidence that
Mhm.
not just the doctor was competent, but he had his staff prepared to handle my surgery. And the same thing applies to any other professional you work with is if they can articulate exactly what it looks like to work with you and take the time to answer any questions thoroughly with you, those are the people that give me the most confidence to work because they've done it so many times that their process is I don't want to say set in stone necessarily and can't be customized, but it's so good. They've done it so many times that you have confidence that they can do it in their sleep. And that's the person that I want handling my work. And so especially when it comes to our world of money, that there's so many contributing factors. But you want somebody who has been exposed to it, or at least has a process to know that they're not just haphazardly or casually dealing with your estate. So that's a big one for me.
Right. And the story of that doctor's team member tells us also a lot about his leadership. So that's the perfect segue into my next question for you. So you decided to take on a leader role in wealth management, although this area was not necessarily your always expertise, your all your life expertise. And but leadership is different things to different people. So let's talk about what leadership means to you personally and how you embody it.
Um, I'll tell you for me, and that's funny because that's a good question because that's a lifetime question.
Mhm.
So um my faith is a big part of my life. And so I actually tell you one thing that came out later in my life because of my faith, basically God exposing areas that I needed to either heal or take care of first before I could lead other people. And like even in college, I felt like I felt like I deserved. I was a really hard worker, always have been, where I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be there, had good characteristics. I wanted to be a team captain my senior year, and I got a lot of votes, but I didn't get it. And I was an All-American, and I never told anybody, but I was ticked off. Well, here was the thing: was I wasn't ready to be a real leader, and that I did lead in other regards. And so, from that development from football, what what helped me develop there was extreme accountability, and my own work ethic that was going into the job. And so when I delegate a piece of work now, I've made the bad hires in the business, I can tell when somebody's lazy or somebody's going to work out in the first week. And so, so now my Mackenzie, my operations director, is somebody who came in brand new, and I knew in the first week when she dove into our filing system that she was going to be just fine, just by her work ethic alone and her willingness to go solve problems. And so, as it comes from football, I learned how to work out as a team, extreme accountability from my coaches, and what sweat equity really was. And so those were all key pieces. After football, when I found my faith, this is where God really started forming me into understanding how to be a more empathetic leader, or to be a more strategic leader, and to really try to find the people that were going to work well with us, and that I was made to lead for, or lead with. And so, a lot of what I think of leadership is, I got to get with team members. I got to get the right butts on the right seats on the bus. And the common theme, if you go follow me on social media, I say this a lot. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. There's so much opportunity out in this world for all categories in business. But there are this is why 90% of businesses fail, 4% only reach 1 million in revenue. And it's because there's very few people that are actually willing to burn the ships and say, this is where I'm going, and put in the work to go get it. And then really stay in that growth mindset to stay there. And why I say my faith is so important is because, I can be very blunt and very hard sometimes. And I relate to the Bill Parcells, the people that just tell you black and white what your problem is. And sometimes that can be misconstrued as a jerk, right? So I don't want that. So it's usually my wife who's got to correct me and say, stop acting like a jerk right now. But my faith came in essentially was, when I learned there was a God, I learned I was not him. And so I very much had to act in accordance with that. And so it's me not lording over you as a team member. It's trying to see what makes you tick. And so if I find the right butt to go in the right seat on the bus first, that's going to be probably the most critical step. I like this from Dave Ramsey. He goes, I don't motivate people, I find motivated people. And find those people first, because if you get an incredible worker in the workspace and they're not doing well, then I have a process issue, or I have them in the wrong seat. And so find the right people first, and that'll change the whole game. And then make decisions fast. I tell you what, you cause more damage by doing nothing than by doing the wrong thing. And I try to we have other agents and advisors on board at our firm. And I beat them over the head with this: is if you can shorten your response time as much as possible, your growth will be off the charts. And so, meaning, like, if I get an idea, you share a brand new idea with me, Regina, and I'd never tried it, never heard of it before. I can go study up a bunch on it, right? And create an initial plan, but I better take that first step as fast as I possibly can. The plan might completely change past that first step, but I better take that first step really fast, because that's where I'm going to learn. That's where I'm going to see what mistakes I've had. But I'm going to initially take that experience from you. That's going to start me 10 steps ahead of where I would have with it. And then, action is ultimately where you're going to gain your best wisdom from, and knowing that I can course correct off of those wrong moves. But I'll tell you, that's what the biggest thing I'm so thankful for is, we live in an area, and I think this is generally true for our world, is like the workers see workers. You see me working, you're a hard worker. So if you see me or somebody working hard, you're naturally going to have some sort of polar attraction to them. And so we want to share our lives with those people, right? And those are like us. So I thankfully I had a group of people growing up, coming through football and into my business, that saw what I was doing, what kind of waves I was making, either in the facility in football or in the community in our business. And they would come up and they were like, we want to partner with you, or let me share you my story and your life story about your marriage or your business. would impact me so much that I would try to implement that into the business. And what happened, it made me super dangerous out the gate and made me super attractive to other people because I was actually acting on what you were telling me to do. And so that's what made me such a great um, mentee from my coaches, that I just tried to implement what you told me to do as fast as I could. And a lot of it worked because there was knowledge and wisdom behind that. But the pieces that didn't work, I just, all right, fine. I throw it out and move on to the next. And so that has been critical for me.
Right. So yeah, and of course everybody has different perspectives and different types of faith and whatever you want to call it. So I have actually made the opposite experience that once I realized that God is not outside of me and not separate, and we're all consciousness, that's where I stepped more into my power and and into my responsibility for everything that I'm creating, right? But everybody, I always say whatever works, whatever works. So everybody, of course, has a right to their own perspective and their own understanding of anything that concerns our world. So you mentioned growth mindset, and growth mindset in my world is also about growing leaders as a leader, growing other leaders. So leadership as a multiplier, right? So from your perspective, what's important to develop a company culture, even if it's like, a small company, a small team where your team is growing and not just producing or performing?
Oh, I'll tell you, immediately the thing, it ties into what you were just talking about, which, I love sharing my faith, but like even people of faith get it wrong. And or
Uh,
have that
can
respect.
I
It's
can I interject something? Because one thing that I
yeah.
always find interesting is that people that Christians use that a lot, right? People of faith, as if other people didn't. So I find that interesting. I'm a wordsmith. I question a lot of words all the time, right? So it's not to contradict you in any way. It's just like I find it interesting how that came about. Because I could maintain that I'm a person of faith, although I'm not, not religious at all.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to put that out there because I always find it interesting when I hear that.
I mean, generally, right when I think of that word faith, it's belief in the unknown or belief in the unseen,
Okay,
right?
okay,
And
okay.
so,
I'm glad I asked you because of this, what you just said, because this is
yeah.
so important to really, we create sometimes a lot of um, division by not understanding or not questioning, not asking about what other people think. And not that I'm in division with you at all, Cory. I'm having a conversation here, which is fascinating. It's just that, I think sometimes it's important to stop at certain words and say, hey, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and you can't hurt my feelings, I promise. But the only thing that I get
It
mad
wasn't
at is
my
when
intention
somebody,
either.
well, I grew up in a locker room hearing the worst things, putting on my socks in the morning, so it's hard, it's hard to hurt my, it's hard to offend me. But I tell you this stuff, I guess the most practically, and you said it just a minute ago. What I appreciate is the responsibility.
Mhm.
And so I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan, and what he shares or where he talks about this is the more responsibility you choose to take on, whether you were meant to or not, the more meaning you can derive out of that. And that's what I really appreciate is in his talks is, happiness is this fleeting thing where like the top of the mountain is one for just for a second. And there's a pro golfer that was just talking, I forget his name, was talking about that, became big in the media just a couple weeks ago about sharing, how he questions, did he really want to go compete and win the championship? Which is to everybody outside of that, they're like, what are you talking about? You want to be number one? Well, yeah, yeah, I'm competitive. I do too. But at the same time, it is fleeting. I need meaning behind my work. And I'll tell you, so like, as you start developing, just to your question about developing your company culture is,
Mhm.
um, if you don't have any vision to propel your people, there's a scripture, without vision my people will perish, and I embrace that like crazy, because if you're working for me and my vision isn't big enough to encapsulate your vision, what you want for your life and your family and your work, it's too small. Mine is too small then at that point. And I have to, I love this because I got this from Dan Martell, but like an example is Mackenzie, our director of ops. She's huge into her fitness, and she's thought about wanting to start, like a health or nutrition or a workout coaching business, consulting business somehow on the side. And I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, let's do that. Let me help you. And I'll tell you, one is I don't want her to leave because she's too good, right? But two, um, I want her to have that. And so if this is truly a desire for you, let's work through it and let's help develop it, because I tell her, heck, our clients would hire you because they love her. And so I'm like, they would hire you because that would be an easy add-on to the business, not even add-on to us, but like where you could be on the side, you have that on your LinkedIn and they just happen to fall across that and see it, and then they want to talk to you. And so, the purpose of that is like, I don't want her just to develop as an awesome team member, which I want that growth, the 10x growth, all that, but I want it to fit it for her. And so her vision has to be a piece of that, because if I never take that into consideration for you, then it's just a matter of time before you leave my firm. Right. And so,
Exactly. I was going to say that because,
okay.
yeah, then they will leave anyway. Or
Yeah.
it's more likely that they will leave, right? Much rather. So yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that story.
There's so many incredible people. I had a great, um, somebody shared this not too long ago. Really appreciate this perspective, because I've had the lazy people, and those
Mhm.
really, they drive me nuts, because I respect the worker. This is how I made my best friends in my life, were the football player, other guys that were in the weight room all the time working out like I was. Same thing here. The people that had proof in their pudding, they could show you their work, they could articulate their work, they could defend their work, right? And so I'm like, if you can defend your own work and not sit here and stutter over the top of it, you have proof that you actually did it. And so, I really appreciate those people. So at the same time, they're hard to find, the ones that fit. So there's two prong. This is the hire, slow, fire, fast thing. But like, if I get a team member on, and we have a 3-month clause in our hiring contracts, and I share this. It's a 90-day period where we're working together to make sure that we're fit for each other. Right. This is as much, if I'm interviewing you, it's as much an interview for you to me than me to you. And so what that means is, at the end of that 90 days, if I think it's not a fit, or you think it's not a fit, and we've learned more about each other and realized that it does not pay us any good, both sides, to sit in a situation just because it's a paycheck. And I'm keeping you from developing further than and keeping you in a role that you weren't meant for, or in a business that you weren't meant for, whatever the case. And vice versa. I'm capping the growth of my company from just putting a butt in a seat, and maybe just a warm body, and keeping them away from where they're supposed to be. So those are really big things to see. Is okay, get those right team members in place, but when you have them, man, work like heck to um, make sure that their vision is building it along with you, and then you pay them well. I mean,
Yeah,
don't let the market steal them. So
absolutely. Absolutely. So before we close this out today, I have one more question for you that is a topic that's intriguing to me, and that you actually had suggested, and it's the psychology of first generation success. So how do leaders, like owners of small or medium-sized businesses, for example, shift from survival, from starting a business to being millionaires and potentially creating a legacy?
Well, I'll tell you, the responsibility never goes away,
Yeah.
right? It just shifts. So for me, what I've really had to learn, and I'm constantly growing. So I have plenty more to learn. It's not like I'm the be all at any by any stretch, but the biggest thing for me is delegating. And so very much one of my favorite books is 10x is easier than 2x. And and so in that, we talk about shedding the 80% of our behaviors or that are constantly shedding our 80% of us. The Pareto effect. I want to go to the 20% that's feeding us the most ROI, so I can continue to shed, so I can delegate the 80% of the work to my team or to somebody else. So it makes me more effective in that 20% of the time that I'm working, right? And so if I can continually do that, offload those low value tasks in my life, I'm freeing myself up for way more creative headspace to go push my business past where it's supposed to be. And I like an example is one of our clients. Um, they were in their elder years and they were still doing payroll, and I'm like, what are you doing payroll for? You're doing phenomenal in life. You do not need to be doing payroll. We need to pay somebody to do payroll to allow you to continue to speak the vision into the firm. And so same there, we kind of get stuck in this previous version of myself a lot, where we got to shed that. And so this is a constant, we talked about this in my master class the other day, was sacrifice. And we're not, so much in sacrifice, we think of like sacrificing our time or time with other people to get what we want out of the business, when okay, maybe there's an element of that at the very beginning, but like, let's sacrifice the old version of ourselves, still continue to take the risk and delegate and hire away. And AI is making a lot of strides into helping that potentially, which will be really cool to see. But if we continue to delegate those tasks, it releases me for more time for my family, more time with my friends, more time for me to read, grow, take more information from you or somebody else, and apply it to my life. And I take that's to me, that's the intentional shift. And the only way you do that is being around other like-minded people. And one of my favorite things about our master class is we'll take a trip around the whole table, and like, okay, we're going to focus on Regina or Cory, and what's one big thing you're going after, or what's the big problem you're dealing with right now. And what's so cool about it is, okay, we say we're a sales organization trying to get top funnel leads. And I'm talking to 3 different people that have already had that problem or are going through that problem and can speak to it directly. And so now I get like peppered with ideas that I can go take back to my own firm. And I see it's happening with Pro Capital right now, where we're changing even our marketing structures to speak the one to many, so I can attract 10 clients instead of just one. And so that's where we have this, this incremental growth where we're taking the stairs versus really compounding growth, which is the elevator. And I'm like, man, give me the elevator path. I want to go up and not this slow, steady one. So that's a huge thing for me, is make sure you're getting around other people that are ambitious, that are in their business, that can speak to you from experience, or from what they've gone through or are going through right now.
Yeah. And you were calling it a master class, right? It
Yeah.
also,
So, I mean,
yeah,
this could be a small group of some sort, a bunch of
yeah,
business owners, like an EO or,
right, right,
something to that
right.
effect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also a mastermind, really, what you're describing, right?
Yes.
That's really
Sorry. That's what I
amazing.
meant.
That's okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I just wanted to clarify. Okay. Yeah, because sometimes masterclass, sounds less substantial. That's why I was asking, because a lot of people I do master classes that have a lot of content and a lot of value for sure. And a lot of people do, but they're also sometimes very superficial ones and some people only know those, right? So this sounds like something really deep and substantial. And that's why I was asking again. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I love masterminds, don't you? Love them. I
Oh,
mean, there's so much value.
The best. You get those are explosive times in your business. And I know you probably know this is why you have the podcast too, right? As part of it
Yeah.
is I get to hear your story. And this is a big one for me is it's always wild the people that get like jealous of your success of what some big win that you've had. I get jealous, but my jealousy goes into like, whoa, hold on, Regina. Back up. Tell me exactly how you got that win. And
Mm-hmm.
at first we just kind of glaze over it, like, well, I met this guy and this, and I'm like, no. Walk me back to the very beginning behavior from day one, and exactly what was the language that you used maybe to close that client, or what led to that big win. Right now, I want to break it down by the detail. And Tony Robbins does this in his stories, which is like, hold on, no, way down the moment that it shifted. And it's really cool because then we got to really pull out, and there might be an epiphany or a specific word that had a big trigger in it that you shared. And those are the pieces that I want, because I can use that and apply it to see if it works. It may not work for me, right? But that's the gold that I could take out of it, that I've seen big growth in my life from.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us today, Cory, and all your knowledge and insights. This has been full of golden nuggets. So we talked about gold earlier a bit. Here, all the golden nuggets. Last but not least, where can people find you?
Go follow me on LinkedIn. I'm real active on
Mhm.
there. All the social medias, but that's my primary one. I love that one a lot. And you can visit our site, procapitaltx.com. But those are all great places you can find me. So go check it out. Would love to have a conversation. You and I connected over LinkedIn, right? So I
That's
really
right.
appreciate that. And it's just good people trying to build community.
Exactly. Yes, definitely check him out, listeners. And thanks to all of you for tuning in again today. Share this with anyone in your circle who might benefit. Post it to your social media if you found value, and spread the news so more people can protect their assets, and also learn from all the leadership content shared with Cory today and published on this podcast in other episodes as well. And come back again next week when you will meet yet another awesome guest. Thanks again, Cory.
Thanks, Regina.
If something in your leadership feels off, or you're ready to lead with more ease and authenticity, let's talk. In a free 60-minute Lead and Thrive session, we'll cut through the noise, get honest about what's really going on, and map out your next bold move. No cookie cutter, no surface level, just real clarity and the freedom to lead as you. Spots are limited. Go to transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to grab yours. Lead like you mean it.